So the basics is that municipalities cannot exclude lawful uses. When we improperly exclude the lawful uses, courts have historically sided with property owners and developers, and in some cases this can substantially limit a municipality's control over how and where development occurs.
Yeah, so, sorry, jump in here. Yeah, I understand, and we understand there's a lot of strong feelings about data centers. You guys all hear me? Sorry. Yeah, and it's frustrating to see this. We understand that. However, at the same time, under Pennsylvania law, which we're going to go through, a municipality has to account for every possible use under their zoning ordinance. By law, we have to. A municipality cannot pick and choose and say no to a particular use because maybe they don't like it. So that's one of the reasons we're doing this, to account for data centers, to put them into the zoning ordinance. So as Megan said, if they do not exist in the ordinance and they're not accounted for, then basically a property owner or somebody who wants to buy property and put in a data center could put it essentially wherever they want. And there's much less control then over the situation and the regulations. So that's one of the reasons we're doing this.
So we get our power to regulate and allow these uses from the Pennsylvania Municipal Planning Code, and it's a state law that grants us the authority to create and enforce zoning ordinances. Pennsylvania municipalities cannot prohibit a lawful land use from existing somewhere within the township. We must provide the reasonable opportunities for every type of reasonable use. If a municipality legally or completely excludes a legitimate use, the ordinance can be challenged as court as exclusionary zoning. Courts in Pennsylvania have historically ruled against municipalities that entirely prohibit lawful uses without a valid planning basis, siding with the developer and the property owners. So what can municipalities do? We can regulate how and where a use occurs via zoning districts, setbacks and bufferings, noise, lighting, environmental standards, traffic and infrastructure requirements.
It's back.
And allowing it via conditional use or special exception review, not by right. The goal of zoning is not to ban every unwanted use, but to guide development to appropriate locations and size while protecting the public health, safety, and welfare of the community. A use must first be identified and defined in an ordinance before the township can apply specific regulations to it. For example, the billboard on Schuylkill Road that recently went up, that is an example of a court case East Pikeland Township lost due to exclusionary zoning. Something I do want to go through is, as we go through this presentation, if the text is bold, that means that it was added or it was updated. If it is just standard font thickness, that is existing in our current ordinance. So if we take a look up at the map, we have the purple, which is the I district, which is our industrial district, which is like Hidden River and a lot of woodland and pasture areas. And then we have the utility district in the tan along the river. The U district primarily holds the old Crombie coal plant, which is currently owned by Pico. And the U district also has natural feature challenges such as flood zones, seasonally high water table soils, slopes, riparian buffers, and its overall shape. It's long and skinny. So here's a little bit of an overview regarding our industrial district. It is intended for a broad mix of uses with larger properties in an industrial park setting. It allows certain offices and commercial uses when they're compatible with the activity. The utility district is intended for more major electric and utility-related facilities. It's designed to support both private and public utility operations and appropriate development in the area. Both districts have performance standards to control impacts like noise, traffic, lighting, etc. Our zoning ordinance already had many safeguards in place for noise, environmental standards, pollution, vibrations, safety, and groundwater supply protections in Chapter 17. And within Chapter 13 in the IU district, we also already had existing protections via more restrictive setbacks and specific standards for regulating uses. In our industrial district, what we're updating is that the previous uses allowed via special exception were moved to conditional use. This moves the regulatory power from the zoning hearing board to the board of supervisors. So some of those uses can be found up on the screen. During the conditional use process, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so conditional use and special exception are very similar to each other. The difference is one special exception goes to the zoning hearing board. Conditional use goes to the board of supervisors as the deciding board on it. And basically what they can do is you set forth in the ordinance regulations, standards, things like that that the applicant has to meet. And then it also gives, the conditional use process also gives the board the power to institute reasonable conditions on the property. They can't be so onerous, or the use, they can't be so onerous as to essentially prohibit the use from moving forward and doing it, but they can put reasonable conditions on. So it allows, conditional use process, unlike by right, conditional use process allows the township to maintain some control. It provides a process by which the public, it'll be advertised, the hearings for it, notices will be sent out to nearby landowners, those kinds of things. So there's more process involved with it, there's more notice provided as part of that process. One of the reasons that it's getting moved over to that side.
Excuse me, what is additional uses?
So we're going to ask that all questions be held to the end of the presentation. Conditional use is a process that a use is allowed in a district.
It's essentially, right, it's essentially a conditional use is an allowed use, but one that the township has some reasonable control over and can input conditions on, as opposed to what?
Can you go back to conditional use, the industrial, thank you.
So I am going to move on just because there's a lot to cover and I want to make sure that everyone has time. So our existing utility district, it was verbose and functionally sound. The previous ordinance did include a catch-all provision that had safeguards and protections, but at 36 pages before any edits, repeated sections made it difficult to follow and use effectively for our township consultants. We streamlined it with consolidating the general standards to the conditional use for all uses, reducing the redundancy while maintaining strong safeguards across all the uses in the district. And where uses are unique, we made sure that their unique characteristics were still accounted for, were specific requirements regarding them. So in our U district, which was primarily the bulk of our amendment, any of the uses allowed in the I district by right are allowed in the U district. That did not change. Facility uses are only allowed by conditional use now, not special exception. This means they'll go before the board of supervisors. We added the data center facility. The bulk regulations and design standards for the overall U district were not changed. However, the design standards for the conditional use did have changes to them. The minimum gross tract area is 20 acres. That was reduced to encourage more boutique-sized facilities versus large, hyperscale, or industrial-sized facilities. There were no changes to our setbacks, as our setbacks were more restrictive than most model ordinances. And there was no changes to the below standards on the slide, as there was not a need to adjust them. We had impervious cover, vegetative cover, open space requirements, building height, and separation distances already regulated. We have existing design standards in place to regulate signage, parking, traffic, landscaping, screening and buffering, storage, off-street loading, lighting, and visual impact. However, we did add additional regulatory requirements and studies that would need to be provided to be in compliance with our ordinance. Something to note is that this is not all that the Board of Supervisors can ask for. At any point in time, the Board of Supervisors can ask for additional studies and requirements at their discretion. So we require additional environmental regulations for all of the facility uses, emission studies and documentation, air quality reports, and they need to be reported regularly. Noise study with documentation, and also an as-built study provided after the construction is complete. A vibration study where no vibration is permitted past the property. They also must provide an as-built showing that's in compliance. And erosion sediment controls and stormwater. There was no changes as ours is already quite restrictive. So this is more general standards that we put in place to help regulate these uses. The ones in bold are the new, so I'm going to focus on them. We have the performance standards, such as our will serve letters from utilities such as water, gas, power, telecommunication. Public road use, so they must provide a plan and bond for potential road use and damage while the project is under construction. Local emergency services, they must provide a plan to the emergency services and tell them and train them how to handle the facilities. Gas, electric transmission impact, water and sewer specific standards, and the ones underneath it that are not in bold, those were all existing in our current ordinance. And once again, we do have that catch-all where we can request other impact studies at any point in time as more information becomes available to us. We also have decommissioning requirements. These were existing in our current ordinance and they can be found on our website today. I'm not going to go into them too extensively, but they're there and they can be found on our website. Then we also did, for our use-specific requirements, such as our energy generation and principal wind energy facilities, there was not too much of a change to them. It was just reorganization. This helps the township accurately regulate the use. It does not make it necessarily easier for a developer to come in. It helps to make sure that it is used appropriately and effectively. So data centers being added to our conditional use in the utility district do have some specific requirements in and of themselves. So they must provide a narrative and a description of the proposed facilities and property ownership and authorization documentation, identification of subject and adjacent property uses, detailed site plans with buildings, setbacks, access, utilities, additional studies and reports as requested by the township, and the applicant must update the township on any changes they make to their plan throughout the conditional use process. Conditional use applications can go on for quite a bit of time, and if things change and evolve, they need to let the township know. For design and compliance, facilities must meet all applicable regulatory standards, state and federal, including the PA Uniform Construction Code. This includes any future regulations and legislation that is passed in the future. Right now, there's not a lot known, so we made sure to have the verbiage written in a way that it changes with the times as we have more information. We also have electrical and infrastructure standards. All electrical components must meet applicable codes and standards. Also, as they evolve, and on-site transmission lines and power lines should be underground when possible. Covered a lot in a short amount of time, and I apologize, but primarily it was a reorganization. It's the same safeguards, but with a broader application across all the facility uses. And it's also consistent regulation across all the uses. We're not singling any use out specifically, which makes it more defensible if we were to go into a legal situation. We have a clearer structure and organization, which means that the township will have a better chance at implementing everything appropriately. We have a shift to the conditional use process so that it goes before the Board of Supervisors to have more of a conversation. We have more objective, measurable standards with studies and documentation being provided by the applicants. And we have stronger long-term oversight. We have the regular reporting required by the developers. We also have the utility and infrastructure accountability with the will serve letters from the utility providers. And we did address the data centers where needed. So overall, we were not reducing things. We were just trying to create the same baseline for all the facilities and strengthening it against all the uses where needed. These were some references that were reviewed and utilized during this process. And some final notes, a data center could have already been proposed under our current zoning ordinance via special exception, and it would have gone before the zoning hearing board. With this method, the board of supervisors would have had limited say on the use, and the zoning hearing board would make the final decision. The township must also balance protecting residents with adopting regulations that are legally defensible. Standards that are overly restrictive or effectively prohibit a use can expose the township to legal challenges. And noise and performance standards need to be applied carefully. Regulations that single out one use without a sound legal basis can be challenged, while standards that are too restrictive can be considered exclusionary. The intent of the amendment is to provide greater oversight, limit where data centers may be allowed, establish reasonable safeguards, and protect the township from unnecessary litigation risk. The reality of zoning is that we cannot flat out exclude uses. We cannot make it so difficult to build that is impossible.
Exactly.
So, and just to chime in on that, as Megan discussed earlier on in the presentation, municipality, be it a township or borough, is what's called a political subdivision in Pennsylvania. And political subdivisions only have that power that's been given to them by the state legislature. So it's the state legislature that passed the municipality's planning code long ago. That code is the one that lays out that a municipality must account for every use. I'm sure many of you have probably seen on the news or things like that in other states, other cities, in other places in the country, they have instituted bans. Municipality in Pennsylvania, under our legal system in Pennsylvania, municipality does not have the legal power to do that. A municipality must account for every use. One of the things that this ordinance is designed to do is to provide for that use in a place where it seems to make the most sense. It will hopefully be the least impactful. And something also to keep in mind, and something that was one of our guiding principles in this when we were preparing it, is that a municipality, while you have to provide for every kind of use, you do not have to provide for every use that the developer wants. So just because we're providing for a data center use does not mean we're providing for a massive hyperscale data center that you've seen in some other places that have been proposed. Based on the size and shape of the utility district, combined with the setbacks, other requirements such as open space, things like that, a developer could potentially develop a data center here, but it's not likely going to be one of those giant hyperscale ones. So that's one of the things we're looking at, is the idea that we have to account for use. We don't have to give a developer every single use that they might want. So that's one of the things that we built into this ordinance. I know there are some, and I don't know, I don't see Senator Muth here. Is she? There she is. All right. So there are some various bills floating around the state legislature, some of which would provide for the ability for municipalities to institute a moratorium. Others, and of varying lengths and that kind of thing. I think Senator Muth is proposing one of 3 years. Other ones that have, one just passed the state house recently that I think provides for a 6-month moratorium that a municipality can institute. That's really, and just, we're not in that process, we're not doing that because, frankly, there is no data center proposed. Really, the idea behind the moratorium that you might see is if it prevents developers from proposing a data center. Nobody has proposed one in East Pikeland. So that's the idea, was to get this ordinance in place so that way the township is protected. One of the things to also keep in mind is we understand that various people may not believe that the ordinance is perfect and has everything in it that it absolutely needs. The zoning ordinance is a living document. We can always go back and amend it. We've already had discussions on a few things that we'd like to maybe take a closer look at, do some more research on, and potentially work into it and institute it as part of it in a later amendment. The point tonight, and I think the idea for the township is, I had somebody who, I'm gonna say it. A municipality recently was at, somebody said in a meeting, a good plan in place on time is better than a perfect plan that's too late. And so the idea is to get this in place, that it limits where a data center can go, how big it can potentially be, those sorts of things. We can always look at improving it down the road. And so that's one of the reasons that the supervisors are very interested in hearing feedback tonight. If there's other things that we could potentially take under consideration, work into a zoning amendment down the road, the township's all ears on that. So.
All right, thank you, John and Meg. It seems like now's a good time to start with the public comment. I'll note for the folks in the audience that there is a 5-minute limit. Please be respectful of the others. I expect there's going to be a few people that would like to make public comment on the proposed ordinance tonight. It's not necessarily a question and answer session. It is, though, a time for us to receive your public comments. We've asked anybody who wants to comment to sign in on the back, and so hopefully you've done that. Each person who comes up, please state your name and your address. We'd like to allow for the residents of East Pikeland Township to speak first. If we have time, we can go outside the township, but we'll start with that. So you can line up if you'd like to address the board, and please come up to the podium and again state your name and address.
And just something to keep in mind, just in the interest of time, if somebody's already voiced your concern, the board has noted it, the board has heard it, so feel free to, you don't have to get up if you hear your concern voiced, or feel free to come up and say, I agree with Bob, kind of thing. So just to keep things moving.
Good evening. My name is Paul Duffy. I'm actually the judge of elections in the township in one of the precincts. I live at 1222 Black Powder Drive. What you distributed is fine. It strikes me as boilerplate. So the questions that I have is what study and what comparables have you done, as in any real estate situation, to establish the levels of environmental and economic protection that you owe the citizens of this township? You want to answer that?
So again, it's not question and answer, but I get where you're going. This is not an appraisal where we're valuing this property against others.
But you have a contract. You have a contract as an elected.
You asked the question, right?
I want to give you some teeth with that. You have a contract as an elected official to look after the well-being of the citizens here. So part of that, to me, would be, what do you know about the economic impact of these places? What do you know about the environmental impact of these places? And if you don't know yet, then say that. We'll give you some time to figure it out.
So these are some of the requirements for an applicant, that they have to present that sort of information in the
What do you know?
Hold on. Let me answer. Okay. These are some of the items that an applicant has to present to the Board of Supervisors.
I'm not worried about the applicant. I'm worried about the Board of Supervisors.
What about it?
What's your background? What do you know? If somebody comes up to you and says, this is my plan, and you say, okay, tell me what the impacts are that you expect.
That's not how zoning works. So they explain to you how the zoning ordinance is being amended tonight to provide for safeguards. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I don't think you're ready.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Lisa Burrell, 526 Gage. The comments that I would like you to consider, should it come your way. First one, conditional use. Is this a reason where we may need to increase the amount of Board of Supervisors if we're having all that discussion? Opportunity, okay. Possibly increasing the amount of people on the board. Second, what protections for residents who buffer industrial areas beyond trees and berms? Third, again, this is, I don't need an answer. What does an industrial company like a data center have to give back to the community if they do build within our area. In addition to the tax base that's being generated for the township, are there going to be rebates to residents? Are we going to be able to have the company fix any vibration issues that happen to private property? These are things, again, for the future. And then what other U-categorized properties are currently adjacent to East Pikeland? And how are we within East Pikeland protected from those adjacent U properties? Those are my Q&A.
Thank you.
Jesse Parsons, 299 West 7 Stars Road. My concern is the transfer of power from the zoning board to the township supervisors. A quick little hit on the website says that the zoning board already includes the board of supervisors, plus 3 resident volunteers.
Yeah, the zoning hearing board is a separate quasi-judicial body, and they're totally separate and distinct from the board of supervisors.
Okay, perhaps I misunderstand. I'm still leery about the transfer of power. This governing body does not have a long history of protecting our land. Before the era of Ron, we saw some pretty crazy stuff happen at the Superfund site, and representation from that company directly on this board, which is crazy to have polluters in charge of the board. That was a bygone era. I don't see a lot of evidence that this board has the transparency needed or listens to residents in their comments enough. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bob Friebel, at 1218 Hares Hill Road here in Kimberton. And my only statement is the noise abatement provision that you have, does it take into consideration a medical problem that has been rampant in most of the IA areas, excuse me, I'm a little nervous, that there is a low frequency vibration that's emitted and has caused many medical problems, especially those with pacemakers, bad hearing, hearing aids, and the list goes on and on. So I was wondering if there was any sort of medical provision that can be placed in the
Is that on? You got me? All right. So as Megan covered earlier, the vibration regulation is that there can't be vibration beyond the bounds of the property that it's on.
This isn't a vibration, this is an actual frequency.
Okay, sorry, I was hearing frequency and or noise and vibration from you. As far as noise, one of the things that the township has to do is the township has to regulate it uniformly across the township. There are regulations already in place in the township related to any noise, any use that provides for a constant sort of noise, that it can't be above a certain level at the property line. And that's partly why we built in the setbacks and things like that to keep it as far back as possible. Oops, now we're going to stroke. So one of the things that we did look at during the process was different kinds of frequency, regulating those. There are certain aspects of that and other aspects of it that we're still researching and looking at as to how we can make it better and do it better in the future. But it, based on the timing and wanting to move forward with this, we didn't get it included in this time around. So we are considering that, and we appreciate your comment.
But there will be other public meetings.
Yes, so I think the township is open to listening to, I think we've got some thoughts on our side about what we might want to look at, research more, and potentially do another amendment down the road.
Thank you.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes.
All right, good. My name's Christine. I live at 302 Draper. First, thanks for moving this meeting to this absolutely fabulous building. The community invested $75.5 million in. I took a moment before coming to look at the land assumptions report that was published in April of 2026, so just a few months ago. As I reviewed that report, I looked at the 2 sites that are currently tagged as likely data center sites. So that would be Crosby, which is 2 miles from the point at which I am standing. Now, what do we know about data centers from what we can garner from the experience that everyone else around us has had, not our personal experiences? We know that they emit an 85 to 90 decibel vibration or acoustic sound. That sound travels up to 2 miles. We're standing in an elementary school in the 2-mile zone. Now let's take a moment. If we're standing at Crosby and we look out down the road, what do we see? Straight shot, Renaissance, 1,200 students, 1 mile. Now let's pretend we're a bird and we fly. Where do we land? Berkeley, 2 miles, 250 students. Of course, I apologize for not including the 650 students that sit here each day. Now, cumulatively, those students are more likely than not going to experience decreased educational outcomes. Reduced reading scores, reduced math scores, reduced learning opportunities, increased deficits, and increased levels of children being attributed to having educational disabilities. Now, I think that the noise situation, though you're saying the vibration cannot go past the line, what are the plans for the noise? Because many of those students that are zoned to those schools not only go to the school in that zone, but they live in that zone within the 2-mile radius. So now we're looking at not only the expectation that they're going to learn in that highly low-hummed environment, but that they're going to sleep and grow there. I can't say that this is going to do anything for the investment we just made in this building at $75.5 million, or for those children in Berkeley, or for the greater community of students that attend the charter school, which is pulling from many communities across Chester County. So I think that that specific item of the traveling of the decibels needs to be looked at very carefully and taken into consideration. And clearly, I'm using information that I've garnered from outside sources, but there are a number of universities and other studies from other municipalities, both in Virginia and across the nation, that you could go to find this information from if you were so inclined. The last thing is the other site, roll back. The site that's being looked at, the proposed usage of that Crombie site is 160,000 square foot data center. That technically falls into a hyperscale data center. It's the report that you guys have on your site, yes.
There's nothing proposed.
Well, okay,
There's nothing in the.
anticipated. I can show you the verbiage if you like. I have it pulled up on my phone. I didn't print it, but I have it here.
Just to be clear, there's no application before the township. This is the township acting preemptively. to
Projected
update
yield, sorry, wrong term. Projected yield. The projected yield of the Pico site is 160,000 square foot self-storage data center or solar farm. The other site is the Ottinger, Ottinger, Thank you so much. And that one is an 85,000 square foot site that could include data center as one of the uses projected. So I think those are just things that as we're discussing this, the community should be aware that our township has in fact invested in a report to show future yield of these sites, and these are the yields that we are looking at, and those are the educational outcomes we are looking at for our children. Thank you.
Hey guys, Bill McMahon, 1047 Maury. Have we considered the environmental impact of the 300,000 to 5 million gallons of water a day that it takes to run one of these things? Almost every year, and many of us are probably on wells. I know you're going to take that groundwater to cool mean factories.
So there's all sorts of studies that any applicant that might come to the township has to present to the township. And so, yes, you're dead on. That's one of the studies that
And how about the 12% overall use of electricity that these data centers also consume on a daily basis, above and beyond what we currently have in our township? The noise ordinances, the impact on wildlife, do we have any concerns about any of those things? Because I know we do.
No, they went through the list of all the different studies.
I hope you go through the list of all the
Thanks.
studies.
Hi, my name is Bernadette Pogozowski, and I live at 2212 Periwinkle Court. And I'm here to say that we need to spend some more time on this and add things, including spaces that should say to be determined or still in research, because if they're not there, we may get caught with a preemptive that doesn't cover us. In addition, to support the former gentleman that just spoke, the ecology has not been discussed at all here. We're talking about the impact of noise and vibration on human beings. Well, there's a big impact on from fish all the way through our food chains and the animals and such that are in our communities. The purpose of the board, the Township Supervisor Board, is to listen to what we have to say as part of supporting them, because we are the people who elected them. And it's extremely important to me to expand the board and to also ensure that people that are on the board have some knowledge or experience, both in the ecology as well as the impact on social and cultural activities in this neighborhood, in this community. It's very concerning because I just heard New Jersey has passed a law requiring that any data center has to provide for 85% of the cost of energy before they can possibly build. There was a couple of slides that talked about doing something afterwards. And as a former person involved in different industries, after is usually too late. You need to know ahead of time. You need to make sure that you're doing something effective instead of doing something ineffective, and then you want to put a Band-Aid when you need a tourniquet. So I think that it's extremely important that we focus on what the community needs are and what the impact is. This will not increase the amount of jobs in this community. This will not increase anything, and yes, you'll get, let's just say, I'll be conservative, 2,000 jobs for construction across several different groups. They're gonna be all gone, and we're gonna be left with whatever the consequences of a data center is. We need to stop and make sure that we cover all opportunities to prevent and to preempt a data centers coming in here, because they adversely will affect our entire structure, including our economy. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mark Bieber. I live at 1220 Black Powder Drive. Just have two concerns. I guess one is with this current proposed ordinance, you guys know how large the maximum data size or data center could be? And if so, if you could share that. And secondly, if they meet all of your requirements for noise, water, what are the ramifications if they go over that? Are we just fining them? My concern is if you fine them $10,000, $100,000 a day, they can just earn that easily. And these companies have trillions of dollars, and they're not allowed to hire fees, and we can't take them to court because they will crush us in court. We don't have the money for that. Do we have the ability to then evict them, I guess, so to speak, from the property?
Thank you. Do you want to address the first question?
What was the question?
I guess how large acreage-wise could it be if they satisfy all the requirements?
So we didn't do specific calculations because we don't want to prepare a plan for them. That's their job to hire engineers and figure out how big or exactly how big they could be. The idea for us was to create setbacks and other things and minimum lot size requirements that minimize the size that they could be. Partly one of the reasons that the new district was chosen as well is it's not a wide open, huge district. It's a very narrow district, so with setbacks and other things, building's only going to be able to be so big. So that was the consideration as part of it, but we did not fully calculate out and prepare a data center plan ourselves.
Thank you.
Are you able to address the second point?
The second point, I think you asked about, so they build it today, with enforcement. I note that one of the things presented was, for instance, noise, they have to provide quarterly reports. So there's enforcement mechanisms in the present ordinance, but we get your point and we're receiving comments.
What would those be? Like is it a fine, or can we evict them from the ground if they're breaking all of it? If they claim they're gonna use 100,000 gallons of water when they use 600 and we sign off on it already?
For any enforcement against any entity, be it residential, business, commercial, the township has the power to send out notice of violation, followed up with citations, taken to court. But yes, we can go to court.
Ultimately, it can result in an injunctive action where a court could potentially shut them down.
But they would crush us in court.
Okay, thank you. Look, it's people in mind, just see if we can get through, and feel free to comment, but please don't be repetitive.
Yep, absolutely. Amanda Alderfer, 400 Brook Drive. And I have two concerns I'd like to be considered. One is if the applicant is providing their own studied report, I would really look to the board to look at centralized agencies to legitimize, the environmental studies, noise studies, etc. And then two, we on our property have the pipeline that goes through it, and that also goes through, I believe, a lot of the U district. So I would be very concerned about potential safety regarding the pipeline that goes through the township. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Leona Boda, 1036 Meadow Lane. The gentleman who just spoke actually addressed one of my bigger comments that I had, which was that we know that they're submitting quarterly reports, but I think probably a big concern within the community would be what teeth we have. And as you said, it sounds like mailing letters, including potential legal action as well too, but I think that's something that should be considered there is, if legally possible, strengthening any action that can be taken. Also, at some point, obviously probably not tonight, but at some point in the very near future, it would be helpful for the community to hear more about the specifics of the noise and the vibration regulations, the effect on potential electricity and utility costs for residents in the area, and ditto to the comment about understanding the effects on pacemakers and other medical devices. That is something that the community does deserve to hear more about from this body, including the effects of sound and frequencies traveling. Thank you.
Any study that gets submitted to the township, be it by the school district, be it by an applicant, that gets reviewed. The township hires its own experts and it reviews those reports.
I'm Julian Rutledge. I live at 853 Spring City Road. I'd like to start off by saying that I work for PNC Bank, provisioning AI infrastructure for development teams from Azure cloud data centers. I'm not anti-data center, not anti-technology, pretty moderate when it comes to these things. But I am very keenly and intensely aware of how much the AI data center thing is basically a gold rush. If you look at why we would do this, why anybody would want to do this, it ultimately comes down to money, because there's money to do it. But we have to look at, you know, how that money's going to be made, right? Like, yeah, there'll be a lot of development jobs initially to build an installation, as somebody pointed out, right? But the actual jobs, the long-term jobs it's going to create for maintaining that data center, very few. Maybe some HVAC guys to keep the cooling, some networking and data center guys to keep the servers racked and run the cords. It's not going to be a whole lot. And why would we want this? Like, if we're not really going to benefit from it, why would we want this? Like, we as a community, why would we want it? I mean, there's obviously like a whole lot of negative impacts. We all know about, right? And ostensibly, there's going to be some positive impacts, right? But we don't want it here. Nobody moved to East Pikeland because they wanted to live next to a data center. It's sort of like an oil refinery. I mean, that's an extreme, like, hyperbolic example, but oil refineries are great. We need them. They produce all sorts of things we love in our modern, convenient lives, just like a data center does. But if you live next to an oil refinery, it's terrible.
I agree. And you may have missed it at the beginning where they made a presentation that nobody's promoting the data center. These are
No,
restrictions.
I understand what's happening here.
And if you didn't have the restrictions, if you didn't have the data center provided for in your ordinance, then the judge could order that they come in, despite the effort to impose
I understand
restrictions.
there's a lot of legal distinctions, and, you know, I also heard the sentiment that, oh, we don't have the legal ability to expressly forbid it. I'm sort of here to express my cynicism. One, my cynicism of the value of any data center going in our community, right? It should go somewhere, but not in my backyard. Okay? Like, it's far away. Like, East Pikeland is not relatively rural for southeastern Pennsylvania. It's not the middle of nowhere, right? Like, it's not. There's a lot of people that would be affected by all the negative impacts here. And so when I hear something like, oh, we can't expressly forbid it, why not? Why not?
Well, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has said we can't do it.
Things can change, right? Like, the people can make themselves heard and represent, you know, we can move here, right? We can take legal action, right? We can organize, right? We can. If we fight hard enough, we can achieve our goals. I believe that. I believe in that. What we have to look at is a longer view of how this is going to affect us in the long term. Just like in the gold rush, long after the mine is empty, the community that surrounds that mine, the community that's built up around that mine, is going to have to deal with all the negative impacts of the mine. You have to prevent children from falling into it. You have to deal with, you know, poisonous runoff. Right, it's going to be the same thing with the data center, right? Long after, like, do we have plans to decommission a data center?
Yes.
Like, I mean, there's a lot of important things that need to be considered, and perhaps they are being considered, but I think the main concern everybody has here is that we're opening the door, and we're saying, look, you know, we're weak and we can't say no, so we're going to try and put a little things in your way. We're going to try to regulate this as much as we can, which I feel is already sort of like a losing position to start from. And
Thank you for your comment. I think we understand.
Sorry, I think enough.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jim Rebarchak, 663 Stamp Street. I want to first off thank the municipality for being proactive with the potential changes to the municipal ordinances. My comments are going to be related to my former profession as the Air Quality Program Manager for Pennsylvania DEP. So, I'm going to strictly stick to section 1316U, the district standards and criteria for conditional uses. And the first one, paragraph 2B9, the environmental standards. So 9A2 requires, prior to a land development plan approval that the municipality would issue, the applicant shall provide evidence of the purchase of emission reduction credits. As you may or may not be aware, this is problematic in that the applicant does not purchase emission reduction credits until the department, the DEP, issues a plan approval to the applicant. And to get the plan approval, the applicant needs to provide DEP with proof that they have approval from the municipality to put that operation into the municipality. So it appears that you've set up a catch-22 for the applicant, which in my former job became problematic, where we were requiring the municipal approvals before we could move forward with the plan approval issuance. You see where I'm going with there. So if something that needs to be looked into a little bit further, if emission reduction credits are required, how does that work with the issuance of the land plan approval that the municipality needs to provide?
We would love to have you come to the planning commission and use your expertise.
I will get to that. On 9A4 requires continuous emission monitors. Again, you may or may not be aware, but only the most major facilities of air pollutants require continuous emission monitors. So maybe something in that section of the ordinance could be either expounded upon or indicated as required by the department, because not all facilities require continuous emission monitors. And again, in the instance where a lot of folks here are concerned about data centers are going to put in emergency generators. Emergency generators are not going to have continuous emission monitors, so you don't want to set yourself up where your citizens are saying, how come they don't have CEMs? So consider making a little change to that section. And lastly, 9A5, which requires air quality monitoring station. I think that's very laudable. It was one thing that, as the manager, we were trying to get more air quality monitors put up around the region. The problem with air quality monitors is they tell you what's in the air. They tell you what's in the ambient air. So if you require a facility, whether it's a data center, a new utility, whatever type of facility, to put in some type of air monitoring station, whether it's going to monitor for particulate pollution, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, it only tells you what's in the ambient air and is not an indication of any violation from that facility. So it oftentimes sets up a facility, the municipality, the department in an adversarial relationship with citizens that are concerned about the pollution that's being found in these air quality monitoring stations. It becomes an educational requirement where you have an air quality monitoring station. What does it mean? Why are you collecting this data? What are you going to use with it? So something to consider for the ordinance. Why do you have that there? What are you going to use with that information? Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Katie Santiago. I live at 720 East Pikeland Avenue. And I'm not here to argue against technology or economic development. I'm simply here as a respiratory care practitioner, respiratory therapist, COPD educator, and sleep disorder specialist. I wanted to speak to air quality, just like the man before me. Data centers rely on diesel backup generators that release fine particle matter and nitrogen oxide, pollutants linked to asthma, heart disease, and respiratory illness. These generators can emit 200 to 600 times more nitrogen oxide than the natural gas plant. A 2025 public health model projects that data centers nationwide could cause roughly 600,000 asthma symptom cases and 1,300 premature deaths by 2030, with combined public health burden exceeding $20 billion. A separate February 2026 study links cumulative air, noise, water exposure near data centers to an increased risks of cardiovascular disease, strokes, and adverse pregnancy events. I just want to tell you that the current average cost of respiratory medication is unattainable for some families, with the average rescue inhaler ranging from $35 upwards to $100. Maintenance medications are priced from $150 to $850 a month, and I'm not even going to go into biologics. That's thousands of dollars a month for people who can't breathe. People are literally choosing between buying medications and eating. Today, in this, I work here in the surrounding community. You can't make it harder for us to breathe. Thank you.
My name is Bruce Bechtold. I live at 404 Black Walnut Drive. A lot of the things that I was going to bring up have already been brought up, so I'm not going to deal with them. But let's say a data center does apply to put in a facility in our area, and they make up their own statistics that you end up can't beat, can't fight, and then they go and build their facility. And then they put it into operation, and then it violates the noise, it violates the vibration, it violates the water pollution, it violates noise pollution. What is in place to stop them, to shut them down? And how can we trust their reports? They're going to do self-reporting every quarter? How can you trust that?
So as I said before, any report that gets submitted, any study that gets submitted, the township hires its own experts to evaluate that report and to report out to the board. So there's that. Thank you.
My name is Cherry Coffin. I live at 212 West 7 Stars. And this has been lightly touched upon, but I didn't think to quite the extent that I wanted to, and I have two things to say. It has been seen when data centers are applying for approval in other areas, especially recently with this rush. They have been shown to falsify or smudge their assessments. And you say you're going to get another person, you will hire someone to assess these findings.
Yes.
If they are found to have made a false report or to have skewed the numbers during this application process, do we have any teeth to punish them for that or to lock them out of that application for trying to work our system? Are there any real punishments before the thing is made, during the application process, for them lying? Because they have been in their applications. They've been underestimating electricity costs and water usage and noise, and then it's been shown in previous events to be wrong. If we see that, can we limit it? And then additionally, all of the proposed guidelines to mitigate an application of this kind, you say it's the only thing we can do. We don't have the ability to strictly ban them. Is it possible to add a requirement of an assessment of how any application would benefit the community? Because it's not going to create jobs outside of a temporary build. It's not going to give us productive revenue or job creation. Can we set a minimum positive outcome that they have to prove? And can we stop them if they lie? Or do we just have to take it and wait until it's already proven to be wrong?
No, so in the application process, there are certain requirements, and they have to produce studies to show they meet the requirements. If we have experts that come in to say, no, they don't meet that, then they're not getting approval from the board.
And, okay, so then my second question is, what do we have to do to, or what steps can we take as a community to change that upper law in the PA government to allow us to just say no? Because this seems like our only power is,
You have to talk to your state legislators.
All right, well, I would like to.
And the governor, because he can veto any of this, so make sure you include them.
So, and just to touch on that, and we understand it's very frustrating for townships in this situation as well. That the state, we only have the power that the state allows us to have as townships. So, yes, if you want a ban on data centers, ultimately you have to talk to your state legislature. If the state legislature is willing to either do it themselves or give townships the ability to do it, that's the only way we can, as a township or any municipality, can outright say no. Otherwise, as we discussed, we have to provide for every use. Because if we do not, then they can come in other places, not just the U district. They could go buy some other piece of property somewhere else in the township, potentially closer to schools, closer to homes, etc., and put it in there because we don't have regulations to say they can't, because we haven't regulated it all. So that's really what this is getting at.
It's not all or nothing. You're making, hold on, sir. Sir, we have speakers.
I'm not for public pollution.
No,
Sorry, just in conclusion, I would like us to have some sort of barrier of positive entry along with any mitigating regulations. And some sort of breakwater for reapplication if they're proven to be bad actors. Not just denying them in the moment, they can put on a little hat and then try again. It's something to keep the manipulation at a minimum.
Appreciate it. Okay, thank you.
The 20-acre minimum, is that net buildable area or gross tract size? Like excluding flood zone, steep incline? Because the U district has a lot of steep incline and flood zone in it.
Yeah, it's gross. They have to have at first they have to have a 20-acre tract. But then, yes, when it comes to building, there's open space requirements, there's steep slope requirements, those kinds of things. So it doesn't mean they get 20 acres and they can build on the whole thing. There's also setbacks and other things.
The flood zone and the steep slope zone, they could build a 5-acre facility.
Potentially, yes. It depends on, where and how much of it.
Space on the 20 acres.
Yeah, it depends on how much is usable.
And then on the noise, I'm 1,600 feet from the school, and I hear this heating and air conditioning equipment all night long. So I can only imagine what a 200,000 square foot facility would do.
Hello, my name is Mary Ann Gotchell. I live at 706 Reading Circle. I looked at this amendment that you're making. It was taken by the provide for the safety, health, and welfare of your residents. Currently in Pennsylvania, 330 data centers are proposed in just our state. This is an unproven industry. When you put it under a utility, and according to your own definition here, public provision of services, data centers do not provide to the public. They are private equity, they are for profit only. They are amassing vast amounts of information on every single one of us to be used in some cases against us and to control us. So to say that this is a public utility use, I disagree with you entirely. And when it comes to the allowance for when the power goes out, that they can generate their own power, I go back to the statement about diesel generators and the amount of pollution and the noise. If you have ever been around a commercial diesel generator, you cannot hear yourself think. And that noise does not stay in a vacuum. It goes out. And if you look at where you put the utility along the Schuylkill River, you have banks that are higher on the other side. That is just going to echo right through this valley. And what what is this going to do to property values? People aren't going to want to buy a house with a data center. So how does that protect our health and safety and our welfare? And the separation that you have right now from residential areas, 150 feet is inadequate. It should be actually a mile. They should not be located anywhere within a mile of residential and areas, including schools and hospitals. These people are here to make money. They don't give a damn about us. And they may offer East Pikeland Township millions of dollars to put in for public aggrandizement. But what happens when the value of that falls because the value of everything else falls because of the data center and what it means? Make no mistake, these people are only going to make money for themselves. And this is not a proven technology, and it's already the concern of the World Bank that the expansion of AI centers is going to implode and will have far-reaching economic vibrations through the whole world. Do we want to contribute to that? Can you make the regulations so onerous? For example, not a minimum of 20 acres, a maximum of 20 acres. That way you ensure we don't get mega data centers. By having just a 20-acre minimum, that does not limit how big it can be. And yes, I looked at that zone where they can go in. But again, I say, how are these public service utilities? They are for profit. They are not for public service. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joanna Tenney. I'm actually an East Vincent resident. We did make sure that all the East Pikeland residents went ahead of us. So I have some public comment for the board. As many of you know, we just got a denial from our Board of Supervisors for the Penhurst data center site. That was 1.9 million. They did appeal, boo. But what I kind of want to question here is, are any of the sites that this, or zones that this would fit in, are any of it brownfield by chance? No answer?
I believe the Cromley site is.
Correct. You should probably look into trying to add into the ordinance about remediation as a requirement. Because if you look into what happens when a brownfield is unremediated, and they start work on that, it could be devastating for the people around here, and I think it should be a requirement, and I'm pretty sure the majority of the people behind me would agree as well. Also, I just want to mention on the sound decibels, 70 at all times for industrial, is that correct? 65? Oh, the chart online says 70.
So it can go up to 70 during certain hours, but if it's going to be continuous, it has to be at 65 or below.
Okay, so 65.
Yes.
Okay, not much different from 70. So if you have a newborn or PTSD or autism or anything like that, imagine 65 decibels. Imagine that for these families here. I think more work needs to be done on this ordinance. And I also want you to look at who's submitting these studies. Is it residents or is it the industry? Who are the people that are paid that do these studies?
If an application were to ever come in, the applicant would have to produce studies.
So somebody that is gonna make money off of it. Not like a third party, not someone neutral, correct?
Well, usually an applicant will hire a third party, present them as an expert, and then township gets
But they
its own
pay them.
expert to review it and comment for the township.
So they pay them, so it's not really neutral, it's not third party, nothing like that. So they're saying, oh, here, and maybe give a tip, just a thought. And then my other public comment is really for the people in this room that are not on the board, that are residents. And I would just encourage you to keep coming to meetings, keep showing up, keep asking questions, file right to knows, because this ordinance is not solid. You could get an application in tomorrow, and you'd have to go over what this ordinance or what you already have.
Once the ordinance is effective, then any application has to comply with it.
Yeah, well, it's not great.
I think that has been said, is that we're trying to get something in place now before an application comes in. And the township is very much open to listening to the comments and further amending.
So for this being the starting point, I'm saying it's not great, is what I'm saying. For all the information that we have out there, is what I'm saying.
And it's been through several planning commissions and nobody has appeared to comment on it, so.
Well, I'm sure people will come out now. Thank you.
I'm Jess Morris, 1790 Pickering. I'd like to encourage you to look at some way when you're evaluating a proposal that they fund to you an ability for real-time data collection for the monitoring of their adherence to your laws. Don't rely upon self-reporting. That the noise is fine. You need to have real-time access. You don't want to find out 3 weeks later that they were out of spec.
Thank you.
That's all I have to say.
I'm Katie Muth. I live very close to your township, off of Bonnie Gray Road. I am the state senator for this district. I just have a few things. I did have the privilege of meeting with the township prior to go over some of my concerns, which were, well received, not incorporated, but they were taken into consideration. But I do want to, and I can share this with you electronically, that site is a brownfield. I did get a document up from the DEP that it took 3 hours to download. So I can send you that somehow, or they can send it to you in a unique link like they provided for me. But I beg you, I request, I don't have the authority to do this as a single lawmaker or senator, but you have the authority as a local government to put into your zoning that regardless of zone, that you can require remediation of any contamination prior to any development. East Vincent Township actually has that in their zoning for residential development, that's a norm, because if it's a contaminated site, building housing on it is challenging and almost near illegal, although there have been instances where it's been skirted. I think that incorporating that is imperative to not just the ecosystem, but the amount of coal ash that is down at that site is unknown. And it is not a small amount. And if you're not aware of coal ash or coal slurries levels of radioactivity, it's quite high. It's very high. The other thing is, I did get confirmation that it was a coal-fired power plant, then there was an oil component to it, and before it was closed, it actually was a gas-fired power plant. So there are 3 different types of energy, which means there's 3 different types of waste that were either held, processed, stored on that site. I did add up the acreage after I had my meeting last week with the township. I think that the woman who spoke before, who said to put a 20-acre maximum, is absolutely correct in that there's nothing in the law or any court case that says you have to provide for a massive hyperscale data center. I think that if a developer came in and is doing what is happening in the Northeast, buying up thousands of acres of property for a lot of money, that down there, PICO already owns almost over 100 acres if you combine their parcels together. So if it's 1 acre per megawatt, that's 100 megawatts. Pennhurst tried to squeeze 590 megawatts on 120 acres. So I think reconsidering your size and that scalability, because there's a 7 megawatt data center at GSK's campus that you all drive by on 422. I'm not saying there aren't things to be protected from that, but 7 megawatts is not a hyperscale data center. So if you have to provide for all uses, then prohibiting a large scale one or requiring it to not exceed 20 acres is perfectly rational and would be protective for your residents. And the other thing I just want to state, because there's a lot of lingo that goes around across my parts of 3 counties, I have many municipalities, and then sometimes outside of my district on the same issue, is that this whole thing about prohibition of a use, the land use, I think it's important for the public to know that the reason that they have to go through a conditional use process is because you cannot just outright ban in your zoning a use. So the conditional use process allows the applicant to present its case in chief to the Board of Supervisors, and it is on the applicant to provide the burden of proof that the harm from whatever is desired to be developed on that property does not leave the property line. Does not leave the property line. In Western Pennsylvania, where I grew up in Frackland, where they have plenty more industrial development than we've all ever seen. If you can't contain the harm and the impacts at the property line, then the municipality does legally have the right to prohibit that application or deny that application. You have to actually go through conditional use, because even in East Vincent, it was some of the veterans from the Veterans Center that was, potentially living next to a 590 megawatt data center, 400 feet from where they are. I'm sure you can all imagine a nightmare of you make it to your retirement and that's what's going to be built out your window. They didn't understand why the township couldn't just say no, and why are we doing this whole hearing process. And I think the public needs to understand under current law, prohibiting the use, you can't, but doing through conditional use and requiring these burdens of proof. There are over 4,000 data centers in America right now. Not all of them are hyperscale, some are. And I have yet to have any developer, any data center owner, any property owner, any gadget of like the electronics that go with these facilities show me the harmless data center. If we have 4,000 some data centers in America, someone should be able to take us all on a tour to the one that doesn't emit pollutants, the one that doesn't make harmful health noise pollution, right? And the one that doesn't pollute and use up all the water. Where is that data center? What you're being asked to do, and I'm not saying what you're being asked to do is fair. The state has failed you. And I'm here as a state senator saying that. Till the end, I have no problem doing that, that's my job. But you all have this very unique legal authority that at the local level, you are tasked through the municipal planning code, making decisions that are in the best interest of the public. Not as waiting in line as the resident prior spoke about the utility district. Someone had messaged me earlier today and said, is this weird they have a utility district or a zoned area? And I'm like, well, every municipality sometimes names things differently. It just depends. We have industrial mixed use in East Vincent. There's always some unique title. I've never heard of a utility district, but I do have a concern after hearing the public utility part that you do have it listed in the ordinance describing it as a public use. I would respectfully request that you remove that. I mean, I have a bill that prohibits making data centers public utilities, but if you just saw what happened on the weekend with Virginia data centers, what did they do because it was so hot? They were allowed by the federal government, which we all can't override, right? to use their generators for their sole power source so that stress was taken off the grid so that we could all run our air conditioners because we allowed Data Center Alley over 15 years to be built in one state. So what does that mean? That means that they could, in theory, be deemed a public utility if they are providing power back to the power grid that does serve the public or taking stress off of it. So I do think removing that section, I forget what page it's on, or that mention would be just legally a good idea so that you're not implying something that you didn't mean to imply and it's referenced in something later on down the way that, well, you know, some municipalities say that we're a public utility or we're a form of one, and there are big tech billionaire bros that really do want this to be considered another metered utility. They're quoted saying that. So I would think that, and I don't know if you can rename your utility district, but that would be lovely because that makes me nervous too. But I'm not an eminent domain person, but I've heard this come up at other data center hearings, specifically in Limerick, about if data centers, just so the public is aware, any revenue that is alleged by an applicant, even though you don't have one, this is why this matters to you, is that if a data center is deemed a public utility, they pay no taxes to you locally or the school district. Zero. It all goes to the state of Pennsylvania.
If I may, Senator, correct me if I'm wrong, in order for them to be a public utility, they have to go through a process with the state.
To get a certificate of convenience from the Public Utility
So we
Commission.
cannot, as a township, deem them a public utility that has.
But
to
the
go
way
through
you
the
wrote
state.
this implies it. In that section. Just in that one.
In order for them to have the power of eminent domain, they have to get that from the state, right?
They have to get a certificate of convenience, but you have to remember that where this could be proposed is next to an existing PICO substation that does have eminent domain and public utility status. The entity that owns the property already has a certificate of convenience to be a public utility. Now, I'm assuming, I don't know this, they would sell land to a data center developer, but I don't think that it's illegal for a power transmission company to own a data center. I know they can't have generation and transmission. That's illegal to do both in Pennsylvania. But I don't believe there's any law prohibiting a for-profit utility company from also owning a data center. So that's what makes me nervous about, this is a whole new territory, I'm just saying, that site down there is an active substation. I encourage everybody to go park at the trailhead and listen to the hum from that substation, it's quite audible. Pre-baseline, so you know what it really sounds like. But that makes me nervous in terms of what parcels could be combined together to make a large hyperscale data center proposal to come before you. And maybe I don't want East Pikeland to be the guinea pig in court on the public utility certificate of convenience issue, but the operator and owner of that property already has that certificate, so that's part of it. And this has come up at other hearings about the substation placement for a data center, because a hyperscale data center always has an on-site substation. So if you go to Loudoun County, Virginia, you will see 3 giant buildings, big substation, and for miles. And so that part I would just remove. I have other things I mentioned to you about sound. You have to lower that sound to the World Health Organization for 40 dBA at night, otherwise you are literally torturing people. That is just, it is just incredibly too high. Sound changes based on the season of the year, depending on leaves on trees, snow on ground. I can see the nuclear power plant at Limerick out my bedroom window, even though I'm not in that county, 4 miles away from me, and I can hear, so can some people here in East Vincent, hear the fans and the turbines from 4 miles away. So that changes with the seasons. It sounds like someone's mowing the lawn in the neighborhood next door. They're not. I've driven through there because I'm like, who's mowing their lawn in January? It's not. It's actually the nuclear power plant. So sound does travel quite far, and infrasound can, what we can't hear but our bodies feel, that is incredibly health harming, can travel very far distances. PM 2.5, remember Canadian wildfires when our sky was orange? That particulate travels hundreds of miles, so what do you think is gonna come out of a hyperscale data center? My final thing is, please explicitly prohibit methane gas generation. I know you have and then there's a part about the backup power, the generators can only be for backup power. It needs to be that can't be a thing. This is not an industrial place, and an industrial operation doesn't belong there. I know you have to do this in the interim of having a change in the state law, which I'm feverishly working on, but you know, I'm not in charge of everything. So the brownfield thing, please just add that in there. Put it in for all zones. If any remediation needs to be just done. We have 100 years of science to back you up on that, 100 years. So I can send the rest of my things, but I really, also emergency responders need to be a part of this during conditional use, not land development. Every single one of these emergency responders should sign off on the approval of what is proposed. Loudoun County, Virginia built data centers. Their fire departments couldn't fit a fire truck through the first 50-some data centers that were built because nobody consulted them on the width of the fence and the gate. They also couldn't fit a truck behind the row of generators. They also didn't know where the water hookup was. They didn't know what the suppressants were used for fire inside. They also didn't have the equipment or the staffing, and that's also during construction. Technical rescues really upped their call volume for EMS and fire. So these are all things. We're volunteer fire around here. There better be a funding source. Again, working on it at the state level because it's embarrassing that the state government, including our governor, has not thought about that at all and thinks that volunteer fire departments are going to respond to industrial-sized fires in all these data centers that are proposed. We had a gas-fired power plant on fire in Adams County, Pennsylvania on 4th of July, and Marcus Hook was flaring off gas and had a fire with a busted pipe all in one day. So having stronger language and referencing the International Fire Code is your legal defensibility right there, and I'm happy to share that manual with you for Loudoun County, and thanks for letting me exceed my 5 minutes.
Senator, for those who can't read the name tag, I'm Ron Graham, and I'm the chairman of the board of supervisors.
I remember you from 2017 when I first saw you.
Okay. We campaigned together.
Right.
I have to tell you, we're very appreciative of you coming. We need your help.
I'm trying.
And we're not trying to kid anybody about that. We don't want a data center in here any more than anybody in this room. And we're doing the best we can. And we contacted your office. Fortunately, got information from you. We're going to continue to do that until you chase us away with a stick, because we need the help that can come from Harrisburg.
Right, and I'm happy single-handedly to help with whatever. I mean, I don't think municipalities should fear appeals of their decisions. That's not being sued civilly and bankrupting you. Any developer, including a housing developer, can appeal your decision, right? You know this. So please have the courage to pass a very strong ordinance that sets the example for other municipalities, because being exclusionary, if you're protecting your residents, isn't exclusionary. You're following the municipal planning code, and you're following the Pennsylvania State Constitution by ensuring these people can breathe and have drinking water and all those things. So those are hard legal battles, but there is court precedent to back you up, and I'm happy to help in any way that I possibly can. And because this is our community, and it's what happens at these facilities does not stay within municipal borders, you know that. So what happens in East Vincent impacts you all, right? And so in this whole southeast region, and I will say to you, the first domino that falls, the first one that's approved, these developers will push harder to come in because they build in clusters within 50 miles of one another for redundancy's sake. So the first domino that falls, these other ones will push harder. And so we have a big fight across the river in Limerick, but we are all in an emergency planning zone for a nuclear power plant. So I encourage you to, chime in to Limerick as well as one of those municipalities, because, it takes a long time already to evacuate, over 2.5 hours if there were an incident here, and you guys are in that zone. And so I'm happy to partner with you and make sure that everyone here in East Pikeland is protected and that you set that precedent, that you are the municipality that has the courage to take it on, because I assure you it's not coming from the state. I go into that building, get my teeth kicked in, put them back in, and yell again at the podium, but you guys are here and have legal authority that I don't, and I'm happy to back you up in any way I can.
Well, let me address the fear of litigation. I'm not afraid of litigation. I'm a trial lawyer, and so is Emily. And we understand the process, and if we get sued by a data center, I don't want to say that's okay, but we're not afraid of it.
Yeah, get sued for doing the right thing.
Well, we're going to be in touch with you, our staff will be in touch with your staff, and together I'm sure we'll provide a very good path forward.
Absolutely, and I'll make sure that I share all of those things that I was able to get documentation by.
Please.
All right, tough to follow that one up. Brian Albany, 301 Draper Lane. I was just curious, I voice a lot of the same concerns that everyone else has said and really agree with a lot of that. But one thing was mentioned and it kind of got me thinking, this is kind of the last point that Senator Meehan made. On what grounds can you deny or accept the conditional use requests, right? Is there only the grounds related to zoning, or are there other factors that go into that? I was just curious, it came up.
Generally, we're restricted to what the municipality's planning code, Pennsylvania law allows. And so we establish criteria against which the application is gauged. Now, there are also some concerns, very legitimate concerns, that are governed by different agencies. DEP, I think from DEP here before. So we're not allowed to get into those areas that the state controls. And that's not only the state legislature, but different agencies such as DEP, et cetera. So, from our perspective, it's setting out different criteria and then waiting for an application to come in and gauging it against that.
Yeah, what I'm saying is if the application gets through and it gets all the way to the point where you guys have to vote on it, right? Are you guys going to be making the votes based on strictly kind of the zoning piece, or is it going to be other considerations that come into it? That was my whole question.
So I think you'll find, if you look through the ordinance that as proposed, that it's very broad, so that we take into consideration a number of different things.
Awesome. Thank
you.
Monica Scriber, I'm from Spring City, I'm from East Vincent. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. One of my questions is, what is your emergency plan if there's an accident at Limerick Power Plant or if freight line or any local industry, or God forbid a data center comes in and it's attacked? What is the plan? And do your residents know what that plan looks like if something like this happens and how they're going to get out safely? Is that posted? Are people familiar with it? One of the godsends of all of this is that we're not used to enforcing any of this because it's never been brought to the forefront before. I mean, when have we had an accident like this in however many years? So that's my first question to you is, do you know how residents are going to get out, and do residents know? Just something to think about. Traffic. There are, we gotta learn from the towns that are currently dealing with this, that don't have boards, that haven't taken the time to research and study. There are towns that they basically will tell you, playgrounds have been shut off because the traffic is so bad and the dust is so bad that they can't allow their children to go out and play. One of the little girls that testified or was on the news said, we're afraid every time we go out, we're not sure if we're gonna live. Because the construction trucks, they live by their laws and their rules. So when you talk about this, you're bringing in an animal that is like nothing else we've seen. And our traffic is bad. I really wish our townships would get together and work, and before another townhome is built, somebody sits down and figures out how we're gonna deal with our traffic. It's dangerous. You drive in it every day, it's scary. And I'm not even gonna get into the drive-by stop signs. I'm gonna write a book called that one day. I know everybody said air, but there was a study in 2025, and the pollution from Data Center Alley in Virginia travels, and it literally is impacting our air quality in Pennsylvania and further north. We know this already, that it is impacting us, and there's a website called Death by Diesel, and it shows in Pennsylvania we are at highest risk in our state, other than Pittsburgh, for that particle, the PS, God, I can't remember what it is, but it's diesel particles. So our air is already compromised, and then we're talking about bringing more things in to exacerbate it, and you know about blackouts, Senator Muth mentioned it, and those generators produce so much of that diesel particulate. And think about what people said about distances from our children, from our elderly, from our communities. This isn't like Senator Muth said as well, I wouldn't want to be any one of you, because you took an oath to protect your residents, to protect the taxpayers here. And so this is an octopus, because you're not just dealing with one or two issues. You're dealing with a lot of issues. I'm not sure why people fight the 2,500 feet setbacks for protection, because things don't stop at the property line. We know this through other research and testimonials. There's so many testimonials out there. We need to learn from the people that are suffering. We don't need to bring the suffering in and then learn. We need to look at what's happening currently in other towns. The noise, every 3 decibels that go up, it just doesn't go up. It like doubles. So like having a sound professional that can explain that, I can't explain it to you very well. It doesn't make sense to me, but 3 decibel rise in noise levels over 85 for up to 8 hours can cause all kinds of damage. It can only, past your 85 limit, people can only hear past 85 for 4 hours. Well, who's monitoring that every hour? Like if you're talking about monitoring every 3 months or whatever, sound has to be monitored constantly with these things, because they can go as high as 90 and up. And animals cannot handle noise. They have to have noise at 20 decibels lower than humans. So there's a lot of animals in our townships. Wildlife, domesticated, I know people brought it up, but it's not just a number, it's not just 1 decibel rise. A sound has to be treated. Somebody needs to understand sound to help you establish that in this amendment. I mean, it's imperative. I will say that heat islands, stormwater issues, there are some towns that their water's contaminated and it's causing diseases. How are you prepared? Have you talked about this? How are you going to go into action if any one of these things happens in your township? I think that's worth a talk, and that's worth research and finding somebody that can give you information on that. I'm telling you, I have tubs of research. I'm so tired of it, but you have to, you have to protect your residents. You have to look at everything. The other thing I will say is that, I'm sorry, my notes are, Macbeth, his downfall was that he had a false sense of security. He had a false sense of security. He was going to become king. The only problem is how many people did he have to kill to get there? And so I think in our human nature, we're being told by certain individuals, oh, this is fine, this is correct, it'll be all right, it'll stand up and whatever. Well, with data centers, you can't have a false sense of security in the amendments and the ordinances that you write. You just cannot, because everybody out here, if you make contact with everybody, they have a lot to lose. They have their health, they have their heart, they have their lungs, they have their ears, they have their pets. So I just asked for you, and it sounds like you're considering all that. Again, thank you for letting me speak. You know, again, you took an oath to protect everybody here and the people that aren't here. And I ask that you, it sounds like you take it seriously, and just keep that in mind as you make your decision tonight. Thank you for listening.
I'm Megan Reese, East Whiteland. Woo! Party in the house over here. I am the future that you don't want to be. You know, that's why I'm here. First of all, way to go for having like a meeting, and way to go for everyone showing up. Like, that's hot. We had about 10 people. So this is, if you want to know how to like stop it, show up. You know, just show up and make everything be heard. We're at, like, I'm on WhatsApp with 500 residents. We're raising money. We're suing our township. We're suing the applicant. So I'm glad you guys are having this conversation before a very eager, money-promising guy, girl, whatever, comes to you and says, hey, we're going to put this in here, take that, blah, blah, blah. Don't fall for it. Literally, the guy lied to my face in front of everybody. And I said, is there going to be battery systems backup? And no battery system. A couple months later, yep, lithium battery, and we're on a lithium Superfund site, right? So it's absurd. They will lie to your face. They will give you plan A, B, and C, and it's like the guy with the cups and the ball. Which one is it under? And by the time, you don't even know what you're looking at. It's insane. I didn't even know what a data center was in January. I was happy I was going to Vermont. I was going to go skiing, and then all of a sudden I'm like, what just got passed? What's happening? And it was because our zoning board passed it like a couple years ago, or maybe a year ago. It's hard to tell, but it got passed. And I don't think it was a malicious zoning board coup. I don't think they knew what was going on, and maybe they did. I don't know. It is so difficult and so hard to unravel, and there's so many aspects to it. And then you add a Superfund site, like, isn't your site a Superfund site? Brownfield? Okay. So, you know, remediation is key. So I'm not going to repeat everything that everybody said, but we do have a bunch of amazing residents, very smart, very intelligent, with degrees, and what they did was they got together with the township and created a curative amendment. So I highly, highly suggest that you get with East Whiteland. The draft is on their website, and look that up, and like get the guy who's at the DEP, any kind of sound. We have sound engineers, we have geologists, we have air people, soil people. It's amazing who's in your community, who had no idea. So, you know, we're fighting all the time. Like, my phone blows up from WhatsApp going, oh look, they just started building and dust is coming up, and the people who are in Malvern Hunt on Sweetsburg Road are afraid to let their kids go out because there's lithium in the ground, and they won't do soil testing because it's too expensive. You know, that was already done during the whole cleanup. And so I encourage everyone to just keep standing. Kimberton, I mean, what a hard community, you know? My sister went to school here back in the 70s, and I remember driving from Lewistown, passing the, East Whiteland, and the quarries, and like, ooh, look at the quarries. Now I live there, it sucks, but, and then getting to Kimberton, and was like, this is peaceful, this is beautiful, this is where you should live. So when I heard that there's a possibility of any kind of, like, anything in, I was like, oh, no, like, keep your place sacred, keep it special. Thank you.
Proposed amendment, and does the board want to take a break before it launches into its regular meeting?
Yeah, let's take 15 minutes.